My fellow Americans, my fellow Tennesseans, and especially in Blount County, Tennessee, the new home of Smith & Wesson, and where these crimes were committed. Now, if you've ever had an encounter with CPS or in anything to do with Child Protective Services, the information I'm about to share with you is very, very important, and it has the possibility to stop this, in my opinion, largest child trafficking ring in the United States. And I will prove to you exactly why within the evidence I'm about to share. This is to be used for law enforcement. Both Blount County Sheriff's Office, TBI, and several other agencies, including senators, governors, and several others, are being shared this video directly emailed to them, as well as news sources. The only way for this to have any effect is to, one, educate the people. One, this video will contain situations that myself and my family has gone through, but also has pertained to several of you out there that are viewing this. A lot of us have seen videos of social workers coming to the door demanding entry, that they have some sort of right to come in. Well, let me share with you my story, and I will go through it and explain everything, as well as how to file against them, the crimes they've committed, as well as what needs to be done and how you can fight this, and we the people can make our voice heard that this needs to stop now. Now, before we even get started, let me understand, I do not condone any type of violence, but also I believe that this can be taken care of in our court systems, as well as empowering our constitutionally elected sheriff's department. And I do believe in my county that Sheriff Barong will stand beside the Constitution and the people of this county and do the right thing and take these people into custody and stop it here in Blount County. What I'm about to share too should shock you, scare you, and make you think, well, maybe I never would get involved. You don't understand, it doesn't happen that way. Let's begin. August 1st, Jeremy Crenshaw came into my home with no warrant, no informed consent, interviewed my wife and my stepchildren on my home property, on private property. Now, one, this is an ethics violation under the National Association of Social Workers. It's a code of ethics violation. You're supposed to give informed consent, and you did not. And let me tell you how you document how they violated this law. See, in Tennessee, you have a Tennessee facts report. So yes, it's found there that he broke the law. He did not have a warrant. There was no emergency circumstances to enter the home, and permission. Once again, the intent was nobody called you from our house for you to come over. Let's make that abundantly clear. Now, most people are saying, well, that's not illegal. That's not going to happen. Well, let me share this with you. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case, Calabretta versus Floyd, Ninth Circuit, 1999. Now, let's make one thing clear. You have 7 years is the statute of limitation to go after these people, to report these crimes, and to hold them accountable. Ninth Circuit Court, 1999, involves whether a social worker and a police officer were entitled to qualified immunity for a coerced entry into a home to investigate suspected child abuse. Sound familiar? Interrogation of a child, strip search of a child, conducted without a search warrant and without a special exigency. In other words, an emergency. Somebody was in duress. Police have to follow the same laws. The court did not agree in this case. The social worker and police officer had qualified immunity and said the facts in this case are noteworthy for the absence of emergency. In other words, they didn't have a reason to come in. They're justifiable. If they come in and say there was an emergency, it has to be justified and quantified to say it was justifiable. In the case with my wife, there was no justification of an emergency. No one was in distress. The police officer was there to back up the social worker's insistence on entry against the mother's will. Now, this is the judge. Not because he perceived any imminent danger or harm, and he should have known better. Furthermore, had the information been more alarming, had the social worker or police officer been alarmed, had there been a reason to fear imminent harm to the child, this would be a different case. One to which we have no occasion to speak, no comment, basically. A reasonable official would understand that you could not enter a home without consent or a search warrant. In other words, you're going into the intent. Did I call you there? Did I require assistance? No. We were simply told by the reporting person, in our particular case, expect a call from them. That was it. Know that you have a right to refuse their services or anything else. Let's continue. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal defines the law and states, in our court, a reasonable official would have known that the law barred this entry. We're talking about constitutional rights here. Any government official, including your CPS, DCS, or what it may be called, can be held to know that their office does not give them unrestricted right to enter a person's home at will. We held, also another case law, White versus Pierce County, 797F 2D 812, Ninth Circuit Court, 1986, and yes, these have not been overturned. A child welfare investigation case that it was settled constitutional law. Now let me explain something, stop right there. The first 12 amendments to the Constitution are also known as civil rights. Now, why you have to explain that to a judge, I'll deal with that later. He should know the difference. He's supposed to be the educated one. He's supposed to be the one in all these cases that's supposed to protect the Constitution. You swore an oath to it. Let's continue. It was settled constitutional law that absent extenuating circumstances, police could not enter a dwelling without a warrant, even under statutory authority where prohibited cause exists. The principle that government officials cannot coerce entry into people's houses without a search warrant or applicability of an establishment exception to the requirement of a search warrant is so well established that any reasonable officer would know it. So to summarize this, there we have it. Any government official can be held to know that their office doesn't give them unrestricted rights to enter people's homes at will. The Fourth Amendment preserves the right of the people to secure in their persons and houses without limiting that right to one kind of government official. In other words, parents and children, understand we're talking about children's constitutional rights that you're violating, have the constitutional right to exercise not only their parents protecting them, the child's Fourth and Fifth Amendment's rights, protections, and should just say no to social workers, especially when they attempt to coerce or threaten. And some of you have this on film. To call police so they can conduct their investigation. A social worker is not entitled to sacrifice a family's privacy and dignity to her or his own personal views on how a parent ought to discipline their children or live. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights were written to protect the people from the government, not the government from the people. And within those documents, the people have a constitutional and civil right to hold the government accountable when it denies its citizens their rights, their rights under the law, even if it is CPS, the police, or a government agency, local, state, or federal. Now, let me explain. Jeremy Crenshaw came into my home, documented it in the Tennessee Facts Report. That's where you go, people. If this has happened to you, they are required by law to take and record it. Now, how do you do anything about it? Simple. You file a police report with your local sheriff's department, not the police department, sheriff's department. He's a constitutionally elected official that is sworn an oath to the Constitution to defend your rights, even if it's against government agencies and people. They have an obligation to do this. Now, specific to my state, Tennessee courts have consistently held that police entry upon private occupied fenced land without a warrant and absent extenuating circumstances is unreasonable, and evidence obtained as a result of a search must be suppressed. That's under the color of law. What does that mean? That's the State versus Pryor 725 SW 2D 667, State of Tennessee, 1987, and has not been overturned. So what does this mean for the American people? If this has happened to you, report it to your sheriff's office. The sheriff's office is then inclined to do a full investigation, and this is where you find the evidence of they've committed the crime. If there's nothing on there that they have taken and gave informed consent, or there's a phone call recorded that the homeowner or the person you're going to investigate has invited you over, that means coercion has happened. You need to let me in. And there's enough video documented evidence of this just on the internet and other social media publishings. That's right, it's a crime for them to do it. Absolutely it is. So I'm trying to keep this chronologically as much as possible and cover it. That way, it's easy for the evidence to understand. I understand some of this stuff I'm going to be vague, and law enforcement officials and others can take and contact myself and or my attorney, Colton Baker, Esquire, at law, or myself, Scott Evers. That's right, I'm putting it out there because this has got to stop. You see, I was raised, you're right, I could take and sue them and put it in federal court and run off with tons of money for all the crimes that's been committed against my family. But once again, that wouldn't be honorable. The honorable thing is to make this stop and shut it down. And how do we do it? We do it by bankrupting them with lawsuits and everything else we can. Now, you report that social worker that's done a crime, and every social worker that is hearing me, understand this. You have been trained or conditioned to commit a felony crime. What is that felony crime when you take and do that? Well, we're going to get to it real quick. Section 242 of Title 18 of the United States Code states, it makes it a crime for a person acting under the color of any law to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or the laws of the United States. Now let me educate you. The way the law works, God's law at the top, common law, trust law, contract law, constitutional law. Yes, the Constitution is a contract written by the people, between the people and the government. Then you have U.S. law. Then you have state law. Then you have local law. Understand, anything that happens up here affects everything down here. See, there's a supremacy clause in the Constitution that says you cannot make a law, a code, a policy, or procedure, anything that violates the Constitution of the United States of America. Well, everything that CPS and DCS is doing, and this is why it's going to take we, the people, the American people, because I cannot do this alone. It's time for you to stand, and I'm going to give you the tools and weapons on how to do it and to hold those people accountable. Because the more these calls come in, because see, here's the thing. I had a caseworker come into my home. He took and violated my constitutional rights. He did it under deprivation of rights. That officer then has to take and do it. And then you tell him, go look at my case report and see whether or not he took and had a warrant to go on there. He didn't. That's coercion, illegal. Now, for the rest of your case, under the color of law, that means anything else is considered after that fruit from a poisonous tree. Now understand, I'm not an attorney. I'm just a well-educated citizen. And any attorney's going to tell you he's right, 100%. Or should I say any good attorney? Let's make that clear. Now, for the lawmakers, police officers, everything else, that you want to understand why they're doing this and what it is, I'm going to give you a couple of things here. A Short History of Child Protection in America by John E.B. Myers. This is going to give you a whole lot of information to make you understand why it is the way it is and the ways of thinking and how it happens. Number 2, Social Security Act of 1935. This is where they get Title 40 funding. This is where they get federal funding for your CAC centers and your CPSs and all that other stuff. That's right. That's the reason Grandma can't get her cost of living drawn up, because they are siphoning millions and billions of dollars right out of the Social Security fund. And once we take and expose how much of it's illegal, because here's the thing, when your cases are overturned, that means they have to pay that money back. And because they've committed a crime under Ex parte Young, 1908, that means you get to hold them personally accountable, sue them personally. Now, the state, once again, is going to take and say, well, that's just the individual workers and everything else. Well, here's my question. I'm not under any contract. I haven't signed anything, and let's make that clear. The only way CPS can get involved with you is if you sign their voluntary form, which puts you under contract law, or they have a court order or a judge that has done this. Now, let me educate you something, because some people have been coerced into coming in. I have a warrant. There are 3 things that need to be on a warrant. 3. Okay? 1, a judge's signature. 2, the person that's gone before the judge to give reasonable articulated suspicion of why that warrant or that court order should be ordered. Okay? Number 3 gives the parameters. What am I looking for? Why? Because there's been a lot of things to where they've shown on some of the platforms and the things that I've dealt with, and people, not that I've dealt with, but that I've seen that people have shared with me, hey, here's the warrant. You realize that warrant isn't legal, right? Because without those 3 things, it's not a legal document. I'm sorry, go away. That's not a legal document. You're missing this. And what are your parameters? You can't have it blank, because then they can fill it in later when they find what they want. That's right, educating the citizens. Now, we've got another document you need to read, and I recommend for all to read, law enforcement, as well as our elected officials, is you need to go to the Down Syndrome Human and Civil Rights Timeline that is published by the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. There's a lot in there that's going to give you a history of where they came from, and understand the Department of Children and Family Services in each state used to run a sanitarium. That's where they would take all the neurodivergents. And you don't want to read the horror stories, because their belief system was they can't live in a society with us. They need to be set apart. It wasn't until Ronald Reagan passed a law saying that, no, we need to abolish those. It's inhumane what's being done. We need to take and integrate them into our society, and the communities need to take and work within them to support their own community so these people can have a life and a family and live a normal life as possible. Now, let me make this extremely clear right away. I have 3 neurodivergent children in my home. No ADA rights were ever given prior to this forensic interview of all the children. It was ignored when the mother said something about it. And it was never given during the course of the court, except for when I said something when my child was being questioned. All of a sudden, they were aware. The GALs did not do their job. Let's get back on track. Forensic interview was done at the New Hope Child Advocacy Center. Now, this is going to scare the crap out of you. 1, there were several crimes that were committed on there. One, they coerced my wife, threatened her that if she didn't cooperate, she was going to take, and the police were going to be called, and they were going to take her children. Now, the other thing is my child was questioned without consent and coerced my wife that she had no legal right for to bring him there to be questioned, which is completely against parental rights. Now, after all the children were questioned, they decided they wanted to take custody of things. So they threatened, intimidated her. Matter of fact, they tried to coerce her into, hey, giving your children away to somebody else in a church or this or that, somebody else to do that. Well, here's the problem. The advocate that was present, as well as the detective, which you were stupid for doing, you did it right in front of them, and the advocate called it and says, wait a minute, isn't that against Tennessee law? That's a child abandonment, and that's a felony? That's how they get your kids. That's how they steal your children. There's the proof you need of how evil they are, that they're willing to coerce you into a felony. And we're brave enough to do it in front of everybody. Now, on top of that, Mr. Crenshaw made a phone call to me. I have a copy of my side of that phone conversation. He took and forged my signature and then testified in family court. I gave him permission. That's right, I didn't. Matter of fact, it was just the opposite. And denied me a right to my attorney to counsel with my attorney. Said I just needed to sign it. And then when he hung up on me, when I wouldn't cooperate, called me a privileged white ass. Wow. What integrity. So then we go to take and, hey, let's subpoena the CAC Center and get some of this evidence of all these crimes that have happened. The response was by email. Once we sent the subpoena over from Mr. Baker had sent over, my attorney, the response from the CAC Center is, we don't have it. We delete that every 15 days. Now, how are you protecting children when you've violated their constitutional rights, which is a false flag and bullshit? And yeah, I call bullshit. And if you don't like it, there's my First Amendment, and I'm a Gen X. You about to play a game you're going to lose. Because now it's not just me. I'm going to educate the thing you don't want, the American people. Now understand this. You know why you broke the law? I got your book of standards that said you did. Maybe you ought to read this again, as well as the people that inspected your facilities. Yes, you have cameras, but isn't there something in there about retaining all evidence between children and parents until the youngest child is of the age of 19, but you delete every 15 days since you've been in your new facility? You just deleted evidence of several crimes. Question is, how many other families have you done this to? But you begged this community for money, and how you're standing up for children and everything else? I call bullshit. And now I'm accusing you of charges of deleting evidence and compromising evidence and allowing crimes to have and coercion of crimes for every person who was there. Now understand, that's not mine to call a whole bunch of names because there's a lot of people there. I will leave that up to the authorities to come get you. And the other thing, don't think I don't have a copy of your contract for your CPS and your CAC Center, because I've got it too. So you best look over it real good, as well as so will all of the legal aspects of everything else, to find out how bad you screwed up and to shut you down. Because here's the thing. You are forcing your caseworkers and or training, and I will say it why, because your caseworkers are going to turn on you. Because here's the thing, you've left them hang out to dry, because all it takes is somebody to report it, and the first thing they're going to cry, I was trained that way. Why? Because it happens all over the place, and I've even had some people that were caseworkers that will tell you the same thing. It even goes against your code of ethics, but you don't care because it's all about protecting children. But we're just going to take and violate their rights. Well, guess what? You just violated their rights and threw the whole case out by doing it. But see, then you go into a courtroom. That's right. Now we get to the first day. Go to the first day of family court. And we sit before Magistrate Bedingfield. First thing out the door, I'm preventing you from being on your property. Matter of fact, you can't go on your property, your home. You go live in your business. Well, isn't that against zoning commission? Here's the other problem. That was a premarital asset. My wife has no legal right whatsoever to my property, and you seized it and took it from me without due process. That's a violation of your oath. And to be honest with you, case law, Cooper versus Aaron, 358 U.S. 1, 1958, still never been overturned. Any judge who does not comply with his oath to the Constitution of the United States wars against that Constitution and engages in acts in violation of the supreme law of the land. The judge is engaged in acts of treason. You just committed treason. Not only that, you're going to listen within that case that's on there, within my testimony and others, that Gina Jenkins and Aaron Schad took and did not do their obligations to their clients because they didn't realize it, looking through the evidence, that their constitutional rights were violated by doing an interview without a warrant. Nope, you failed to uphold your client's rights. That means you're disbarred. You're done. But not just that, you didn't do any independent investigation. You never pulled any medical records. Matter of fact, you did from the hospital, but anything else was done. But this was a psychological case. These were neurodivergents that we were dealing with. You didn't even consult them. Let alone Aaron Schad. Did you even realize my son was interviewed in a forensic interview without any parent's permission? Because you didn't do your job to protect that child, as you so say you do. Nor did Gina Jenkins. You didn't pull psychological records. Matter of fact, here's how I can prove you didn't. Because you sent an email over to my attorney, which we have that evidence, between the first day and the second day of family court, requesting those documents from my attorney. On top of, during the course of that case, we entered evidence, as you will be easily able to obtain, law enforcement, of the crimes of Mr. Crenshaw, devaluing and proving that he had committed perjury in the courtroom, that I had given him permission to sign my name to that document, the voluntary surrender document. And it was ignored. Matter of fact, you had an obligation. You had an obligation that after the case was over, or anything that was going on, Bedingfield, you were required by your duty, oath, and law to report the fact that you had violated my constitutional rights by illegal seizure, because you knew it. Because when I said, and you tried to question me on it, and I backlashed on you, you realized you had broken a law and you were going to lose everything. Now, the Friday before our first, just so I don't forget, you sent another caseworker over the Friday. See, we had court on Monday, so the Friday before, CPS sends over Miss Kristen Leonard and another associate to my home again. And by that time, there was a post out front that you completely ignored. Said no warrant, no entry, no trespassing, no soliciting. And even quoted Tennessee Castle Doctrine with the TCA code. It's still posted at my house today. You're more than welcome to drive by, law enforcement. It sits there that you can see from the street. You ignored that. You came on my door saying that I had violated a court order, that I wasn't supposed to be on the property. There's just one problem with that. I defied an unlawful order because I knew my constitutional rights. But guess what? Now you're going to be held accountable. So you and your associate, I will be charging you with intimidation and tampering with a witness, as well as your supervisor that sent you over. And it was real easy to go pull who owned that house and when they owned that house to make sure you were compliant within the law and not violate my rights. But you were too lazy to do it. Now I'm going to show you some facts that comes through here. And this comes from their own national websites. I want you to look at those. If CPS is so safe, why do those numbers look like what they do? This comes directly from the Children's Bureau and Office of the Administration for Children and Family Services. You can find this at www.childwelfare.gov. Once you look at that, 16% for every family you do. That's 16 out of every 100 families that you find there's anything there. How many of those are real substantiated cases now because we found out you have broken so many laws? Because here's the thing, if it's happened in 7 years, you can still file that police report and it's still quantifiable. And it's then the duty of the institution or the officers to, one, report to the state this person can no longer do it until this investigation is concluded. I see a lot of your social workers right now have realized they've committed this crime and they're going to be running to an attorney. Well, guess what? Ignorance of the law is no excuse, nor does it escape your consequences of the law and the punishments thereof. Now, some of you may want to make a deal. Hey, I was trained like this. That's between you and them. That has nothing to do with me. But for you to take and do what you did to my family, to me, all because you had a personal vendetta and no due process is too much power, which shows exactly why this system needs to be destroyed. This is happening too much. Now, before you get all wound up, well, what about the children? What about the children? What about the sheriff's department? They can take care of the legal. Well, what about the psychological things, this, that? We got UT Hospital right up here from us. If not, some of your other medical institutions have plenty of ways of filing for those things in the private sector. Why does it have to be public? Or one of your subcontractors? Why? Because it's about the money. This is serious, and the only way we can do this is together as we the people, and to sound the alarm and once again activate the RICO Act. Why? Because if there's enough people that have done this, that's right, it goes under RICO Act. So let me explain something. Both my wife and myself come from military families. Because you have done all these things, you've committed fraud against the state. Hence, you have committed fraud against the United States government under Title IV funding. And conspiracy to defraud the United States government is an act of treason. Therefore, I hereby call to activate the Kraken, and that you be held accountable for crimes of treason in the highest court of this land, and that all punishments be made to the extreme, as it not only dealt with the adults, but understand these crimes also include children. Game's over. It's time to bring this whole corrupt, diseased temple down to where it's an act of God Himself, and they feel the hand of God Himself We have now been issued millstones and the ability to hang them around the necks of every one of them. So if you've had a judge, a magistrate, a GAL that's been on there and that's happened to you and they didn't see it, sorry, you're held accountable too. Why? Your obligation, your contractual obligation was to protect the rights of those children and the rights of everybody in that courtroom, and it did not need to be verbalized. That you should have known better. Which means it gives you the right to remove them. Now, how do you remove those? One, we file against their bond. Number two, you send to the Bar Association of your state a certified, not just certified, but notarized. This is the power of the public notary. And you can thank Malibu Dallas, and if you know who I'm talking about, if not, go on TikTok. He's got a ton of information. Because I've collaborated with him and several other attorneys and others across this country to show exactly how we can take this institution down and bankrupt the hell out of it. Because now your workers ain't coming to work because they realize you've had them committing crimes. Then you're going to get sued by them. Then all the people that you've hurt are now going to sue you. What money are you going to pay them with? State money? Social Security money? You're defunded because you've committed these crimes. Maybe you ought to look at, oh yes, I know what that is too, your state's bench report, which is the requirements for all officers of the court and the criteria of things that they're supposed to meet. Yeah, Gina and Cochran and all the rest of them, and Aaron Chad and Betty Field did not meet those requirements whatsoever. Matter of fact, it was one attorney, federal attorney I talked to, called it kangaroo court. Well, guess what? We're now stripping you to where we're coming after everything you got personally, your insurance, your malpractice insurance, and every bit of it. And it's not just me. It's going to be we the people, and we're going to show you what we the people means. But it also empowers the one thing that you've intimidated. Your constitutionally elected sheriff that now and always has had the power to bring you down. But the only way he can act is if we report these crimes. And then in court, you can legally go after him to recoup your losses or compensate you financially for anything up to 7 years. But the first thing you have to do is report that crime. Now, I would suggest all sheriffs have a hotline for this, because this is going to be big, especially here in Blount County, because there's mass corruption with this CPS office. And I know it's happening all over the place. The only way to stop it is to file and hold them accountable. Because if your sheriff is a good, constitutionally elected sheriff and does his job, he will take, and I guarantee you, he will do as I suspect the sheriff here, Sheriff Barong in Blount County, will stand up and say, you will not do this to my people, because I represent them. I stand between you and an overreaching government, and now I will arrest you for your crimes. But they cannot do anything unless it's reported. That's why I'm making this video, one, to report some of my crimes, not the specifics of the crimes that were committed against me, but the fact that to educate the people. Why? Because we've had a failure in our system to educate our citizens of their rights and the laws of the land. Public education, higher education, you failed. Because you have all these caseworkers that are getting ready to come to their demise. And that's going to really suck for some of you. I'm sorry, but I wish you would have known better than to commit these crimes. But you're still going to be held accountable. But once we hold everybody accountable, then it's going to come down to a forensic accountant to go through, where does this money go? Who's getting paid? This is what I take and I push for our lawmakers in Tennessee, as well as in every other state, as well as Congress and the Senate of the U.S. This has got to change. This has got to stop. We have other things in place that would work so much better and cost so much more less out of our pocket. Instead of running up a deficit, we could start paying some of our stuff by eliminating these things. Now, if you're somebody that's doing counseling with these children, I highly recommend that you take and go to a legitimate facility that's not a state facility, to where you can practice those things and heal children that actually are harmed and do experience any kind of abuse. I'm not trying to take that away, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And the in-between spot to where we've been, well, as my grandfather said, right is right, wrong is wrong, and everything in between is bullshit. And it's time for the bullshit to stop. It's time to hold people accountable, especially when it comes to our children. This is one thing across this nation. I believe no matter your race, color, religion, or your political affiliation will agree with me. It's time to stop with our children. Enough is enough. If there's a crime, well, good. Remove the children, this and that. But that's up to law enforcement, not for you to determine. And for what you've done in this case, congratulations. You gave me the one thing you should have never given a person like me, is time and know how to research and how to blow you out of the water. Because once I got a hold of you, you're done. And if you think I'm fighting fair, there's one thing I was taught a long time ago. If you ever find yourself in a fair fight, you're not fighting right. You've come after veterans' kids. You've come after, the low income, low educated areas, the people you've manipulated and conditioned. Well, guess what? Now they have the information to go after you and shut you down. And you're right. I could have taken the money that I will get and come after you and make it known also. I don't negotiate with terrorists. I'm going to do everything I can to bankrupt every bit of you. You came after my family. Now I'm coming after your corrupt organization, and I'm not going to stop until it's done and obliterated. Congratulations. You've just created an enemy. And I will work with other families and other things, even if I have to work with lawmakers, to make sure that this never happens again to our country. That's a beautiful thing about our country and our Constitution. We've made mistakes, but we have to correct those mistakes. I'd like to say thank you, one, to our men and women that serve here and abroad. My heart goes out, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. As coming both from me and my wife, coming from a very strong military family. We thank you. I thank you to the Sheriff's Department and the deputies that will stand up in the face of this evil and stop the biggest child trafficking ring, that we the people can now empower the Sheriff's Department and stand behind them to end this reign of evil forever. I leave it to our lawmakers, both state and federal. It's time for some changes to happen. Why wasn't this corrected? Why wasn't this attacked? That's a case law back from 1999 that quoted one to 1986. Why did this go on for so long? Who does it profit? That's not for me to figure out. I'm merely asking the question. And I'm reporting the crimes. These are just a few. Trust me, once the investigation starts, it's coming for all of you. You know why? Because I'm going to trust those investigators to do their job, to understand this. This could have been their children or their grandchildren you could have gone after. Because you don't care who you go after, do you, CPS? It's whoever you can, just to make your billfold fatter. Not about the children. And the facts in this case prove exactly that. Now, please let me reiterate. I do not want violence in this case. I believe this is something that could take, and even though it is constitutional rights, that it's been violated, and violating the Constitution is considered an act of war. But I believe that we can take this out without anything happening. And also, to recap for you social workers, understand this too. That case stripped you of your rights. So when you went into that home, you were no more than a common criminal breaking and entering and going after children. Now, I don't know what castle doctrine is in particular every state. I do know if you show up in the state of Tennessee and pull that and people understand this, you've now been put in harm's way by your employer. because it's self-defense. You're not there for a legitimate reason. And this case law and everything I've quoted is the exact same thing that they'll put out there for you, because now the people know. But once again, I do not take and want anyone to be violent. I don't want a loss. This is preservation. It's tired of us living like this. Tired of it. We're tired of being attacked. So now we're turning to our institutions that are there and say, do the right thing and protect the people. Because remember, the contract, that contract of the Constitution, it was written by us, we the people, to limit our government to not get to tyrannical things. And then it gives us options for tyrannical government or institutions that come after and break these to hold them accountable. Well, here's the thing. If this has happened in your case, they've defrauded the state, which also means they've received that Title 4E money, which means also they've defrauded the United States government. That's an act of treason for caseworkers, supervisors, your GALs, the attorneys that support CPS, and your judges and magistrates. How dare you? How dare you have done this to the American people? Well, now you're going to feel the weight of the American people as they come for everything you have. This is where we come together, regardless of anything, and show you the power of what the Constitution and what the true law of this land means. But you came after my family, and I'm going to play to win. But here's the thing. I'm not coming alone. I'm coming with the entire American people, because it affects everybody, which means they've defrauded Granny and anybody on Social Security out of their money. That's why you can't live. And those financials are public record. You can look them up. So anybody out there that is hearing this under my voice, you've got more information or anything else, all you other people that do the computer things that you do and you publicize, find some things and where some money came from, well, that's up to them on how that got out. But I do know and trust in the American people. We're the sleeping giant, and you just woke it. And you just gave me the tools to put the millstone around your neck, the rock and the sling to take out the Goliath. So now you're going to see the millions of people that stand behind us and me, because we're coming for you. And it's not going to stop. So if you have a major and you're in college right now, I would suggest maybe a different major. Because the people that are working this, they're about to lose everything they've got, including possibly their freedom. I thank you for listening to this. Once again, law enforcement, this is going to TBI, Blount County Sheriff's Department. Any further evidence, you know where to find me. And if you know me, you know me. And for good reasons of the things I've done to help this community and to help this state. And I believe that says a lot about the integrity and honor that I have, because you've seen it demonstrated over and over again. But this has got to end. So any additional things that you need for your investigation and so on and so forth, please see my attorney, Mr. Colton Baker, Esquire. That evidence will tell you and point you exactly where to look and what's there or what's been taken. But the reason I make this is to make all these people stop immediately and not drop out. These are criminal reports that I'm giving to you. This has nothing to do with me suing you in federal court. And understand that's coming, and that's coming big. And I'm not negotiating with you, and it will go before a jury, and a jury of your peers will stand there and understand what you did and how you did to my family, myself, and how it affected me personally and through my business, that you wanted to rob me. Well, guess what? Rabbit's got the gun now. Game on. God bless you. God bless our armed forces. And God bless our police and our sheriff's office, our constitutionally elected sheriff and their deputies. We thank you for your service. And here's the chance, do the right thing. You've been bullied around. showing the power of a constitutionally elected sheriff. Time to put the checks and balances in place like they were meant to be. Thank you.